is sweet. I'm looking at mine and looking at yours and envy.
Yeah. I don't even remember. Was it? I think it was like $300 or something, but well worth the investment over time. I'll say.
Let's say your whole background and everything. Spend some time. We need up our game, guys. So. Got to get a fixed background like that. So. Hey, Charles.
Howdy.
Good to see you again.
You as well.
You made it to second level, of course, as we mentioned. It's more of a technical interview. So we have some few of our team on here from the various groups. So we've got, in order, I guess, on the top for me is Bill Driver. I'm going to do a quick intro. What's your role?
Yes, sure. I'm the cloud architect on our enterprise architecture team.
Okay, Brian.
Hey, I'm a site reliability engineer, focus on observability, DevOps, and web technologies.
And then
Hi, Charles. VP IT Risk Management and Security Operations.
it's a little bit of smattering across the company. So we just wanted to maybe do a little bit more of a technical guy interview, by virtue of these guys know a little bit more about you. Probably we should just start though with another general introduction of yourself. Say hello to the team.
Hey, my name is Jonte Charles. I go by Charles, and I've worked as a cloud engineer, senior cloud engineer across Azure, AWS, and GCP, and I've done architecture on those platforms as well.
So I think everybody has a copy of a resume, and I don't know. We've already talked to. We liked Charles. Enjoyed having a conversation with you, and we'd love to maybe dig into a little bit more. Have any things in particular you want to start digging into?
I want to know more about that microphone, dude. That thing is sweet. I'm looking at mine and looking at yours and envy.
Yeah. I don't even remember. Was it? I think it was like $300 or something, but well worth the investment over time. I'll say.
Let's say your whole background and everything. Spend some time. We need up our game, guys. So. Just got to get a fixed background like that. So maybe tell us a little bit about your last job, what you've been doing, a little bit, maybe get the mental juices here flowing for the team and questions and directions.
Yeah. So right now I'm coming off of one GCP project where we were building out like a cloud native solution for automated password rotation on their Cloud SQL Postgres instances as well. And presently I'm working on a migration from older standard of using Terraform to deploy instances on Azure. We more or less started from scratch. The previous architecture we had wasn't really great for the developers. They didn't really want to learn Terraform, so we built out a new process for them on that. And there's another effort to, let's say, modernize or adopt a proper standard for Azure for a team that already has a footprint, but they're not necessarily following a structured game plan for everything that they're deploying. So redoing the management groups, how we're grouping the subscriptions, thinking about policy, and also just implementing a tagging structure as well too, so we can have a little bit more visibility from a cost and ownership perspective there. And a lot of other ad hoc stuff in between there as well too. Building out projects in Wiz as well, just so we can have more finite visibility on some of the findings that we got from there. No one's really touched it at this point, so that's what I'm working on.
I'm going to turn it over to the team to start. Even.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I was noticing you kind of got the breadth across kind of Google, Azure, and AWS. Is there one that you feel more comfortable with over another, or maybe one that's you're not as comfortable with, or you just feel kind of equally yoked across all of them?
Equally yoked, I'd say. I'm not fearful of being thrown into any cloud platform or cloud environment at this point.
can have some questions. Oh, go ahead. Saw you went off of mute. Go for it.
We have a decent amount of experience of traditional CI/CD pipeline deployment. We're a little immature in our infrastructure as code pipelines, so we're kind of going through that phase of using a new platform, Azure DevOps, trying to figure out infrastructure as code pipelines, what technologies to use. Right now, we're pretty locked into Azure for some other reasons. So we're kind of standardizing on using Bicep, which is a little bit different than probably the best practice of using Terraform, so you don't get vendor locked in. How would you come in and help? And we're struggling a little bit trying to figure out what does our model look like, what does our template look like, how do we organize, what's best practice. We're deploying some resources, it's working. Tell me how you would approach. What's your philosophy on infrastructure as code? How do you organize? What rigor do you put on it? How do you separate environments? Knowing that we're in an Azure DevOps services and using Bicep, how would you come in and help us establish, kind of some best practice and some templates and some methodologies to do this more efficiently?
Yeah. So just from what I'm hearing, my opinion is definitely probably going to go against some stuff, but I would scrap Bicep entirely. I know it's like a Microsoft's tool for IAC, but I think Terraform is easier to learn. I think there's more maturity like in the ether in regard to Terraform. And of course you still want to have a skill set that you can take across other platforms if your footprint changes over time, or maybe you want to have some type of DR strategy with a multi-cloud platform footprint. I think I would scrap Bicep entirely. As far as the configuration for like how you would do Terraform, there's like a million ways to do it. There is no right or wrong way to have it structured, but there are some efficient and inefficient ways to go about it. In the environments that I particularly like to work in, there is separate modules for all the resources that you wish to deploy. So let's say you want to deploy App Gateway, Azure Load Balancer, Azure Function, just those services, for example, you'd have separate modules spread across separate, let's say, projects where you would just have those particular Terraform modules. And then based on your usage of them, you would call them from a main repository. I've seen monorepo environments before, not a fan of them. I do think it should be like one segregated repository per environment. I think the pipeline should be one-to-one. I think they should be staged so that one environment pipeline or that one repository that has your Terraform code can deploy to multiple environments for that particular team. So let's say you have app team 001 and they have a dev staging and prod. There would be one repository with a pipeline with separate stages for each environment that you can deploy to with a manual gate. As far as the actual like Terraform structure, like I said, there's like a million ways you could do it. There's no wrong way. But me personally, I do like the idea of having the multiple TF-var files in that single repo. So of course you can have the different deployments, the different environments, and have them all pull from that centralized scaffolding of Terraform. So all you're doing is rotating the TF-var values and the variables. That's what I would do. I think there should be, I like Wiz. I said I work with Wiz now. I really like Wiz. I know it's expensive, but I think it's a very cool tool. I would implement that as a security measure in the pipeline. I've worked with Checkoff before as well too. I've worked with Trivy before too, in terms of like implementing those as security practices in the pipeline.
Yeah, we have Wiz, right, Bill? We don't have it integrated into the pipeline, but we do have it, I believe, monitoring our subscriptions.
Interesting.
Yeah, we've got it monitoring already for just vulnerabilities and real-time analysis.
Yeah.
So, and I come from a more traditional CI/CD pipeline where you do integrate that kind of SAST and SCA and DAST into the pipeline. How do you, like, what kind of things do you check against Wiz to allow that pipeline to proceed? on an IAC pipeline?
I haven't
I'm
configured
not
it.
familiar with Wiz.
Yeah, I haven't configured it from scratch before. I'm walking into an environment where it's already provisioned, but from the environment that I do work in, it scans the Terraform code for any misconfigurations or vulnerabilities that you have, and then in the portal, once the pipeline runs, of course, before you get to like your actual approval phase, your actual like manual gate, you could go ahead and hit the scanner in the portal like directly from the pipeline, and it'll take you to that section of the Wiz portal that'll say, hey, this is what we think is a misconfiguration. Here's the most ideal fix for it. I think that's really cool. I think that's really, really helpful.
That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know it had that capability. We are using the out-of-box Azure what if kind of, I don't know what you call it, widget module. I don't know what it is, but so at least we get Microsoft telling us if we're way misconfigured or what it's going to do with that bicep. But
Copy.
that's interesting that Wiz will assess your code. We want more rigor.
Charles, I just have a couple questions for you. Can you maybe describe a situation where you had to deliver something under pressure or how to fix something urgent? What do you do first, and how do you keep others informed?
I think first thing is level set. Like, just because something's urgent doesn't mean the engineer that you're pulling to get it done isn't also working on a million other things that's urgent. So probably level set with like my leadership or management, so they understand I'm getting pulled into something that is quote unquote urgent, and really understand like, okay, this is the hard or soft timeline to get that done. And communication, I think, can be simple. Of course, your emails, your Teams messages, your Slack messages, your meeting invites. Sometimes I'll even like set a calendar invite with like without a meeting just to send out a notification on something. You know what I mean? But I think that's some good baseline things to do. But once you really understand the due date for something, leading up to the due date, if you get blocked or something like that, you definitely need to over communicate what's really going on, because sometimes like it's a problem that you don't know how to fix and you literally need time to figure out how to fix.
How do you explain what the cloud is, or maybe a complex cloud issue, to non-technical stakeholders?
I describe it to people as a vending machine. Like you put a quarter in to the vending machine, you get like a supercomputer out of it. And more or less, you're spending pennies on the dollar to get hyper flexible and scalable resources. And it's more or less data centers thousands of miles away that you'll never see or touch. And the people that you're renting from, Azure, AWS, GCP, they're the vending machine, so to speak. But that's how I describe the cloud to people. For certain other concepts, it's not always going to be the easiest to break down. If you said, oh, could you break down the usage of like a Helm chart against a Kubernetes cluster, it's as simple as I make it, it's going to be a relatively complex explanation. But that's how I would describe the cloud to someone.
Awesome, thank you. And then I see in your resume you talk about configuring Azure role-based access, RBAC. Can you explain what steps you took to do that?
So I'll give you an example of getting access to like a storage account. Like in between having the Jira tickets or the ongoing projects, we'll still have ad hoc stuff like that that'll come through our board. So it could be a request to get access to a storage account. You would go to the portal, the target resource, subscription, or so on. Find the IAM blade, select the actual user as well as the actual role that they need to have associated with their user or group so that they can access the resource and add it on there. And in the case of someone needing to access a storage account, it'd be something like storage account contributor or blob contributor or something like that, depending on how you want to scope it down. But for the most part, go to the portal, hit the blade, select the role, select the user / group or the identity or so on and so forth. But ideally in a more mature environment, that's just going to be done with Terraform anyways. Testing?
Explain.
Oh, he's on mute. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I've had a little click happy mouse today. It's double clicking accidentally. But let's just kind of talk about just end to end how we do this. So if we come to the table and got a new web app that we're deploying in Azure, or let's just say Azure because that's what we work with. Can you talk me through like your process of going from nothing to production? It could just be a very basic web app for all that matters, just going from nothing to production.
I'll preface this by saying, like, I'm not super heavy on the app side. Like, have I migrated an app to Azure before? No. Have I migrated VMs? Yes. But if I had to think about it, I would think, what service are they going to use on the Azure platform to host the app? Is it going to be app service? Is it going to be a container? Is it going to be a function? I'd figure out what service it actually is first. And I think from there, we would consider the actual environment from a management group and subscription perspective. Yes, you want to migrate an application, but you still want to be cognizant of the stages that you're going to be deploying it in. You want to be cognizant of the API keys, the calls that you might make, as well as the permissions of who can actually access the application. Those are things I would consider. Also, like, in considering those, you still want to consider how you're going to manage the secrets associated with the application. So if we pick any one of those services, maybe it's a combination of app service with Key Vault, with the API keys, with maybe some additional code. Maybe we want to think about availability associated with the app service as well too. But for the most part, I would want to deploy the actual platform services with Terraform if possible, with that same pipeline and repo structure that I had answered with earlier, so that we can do it incrementally across dev, staging, prod, or however you categorize your environments. And of course, the identical resources across the environment. So you have your dev keys, staging keys, et cetera, et cetera. As far as the actual config of the application, I wouldn't know. It wouldn't be something I would be adverse to figuring out, but those are my initial thoughts.
Thank you.
And what tools and resources do you use? I liked your answer. Because I focus on a lot of web technologies. So what is your process to determine? Is it an app service? Is it a function app? Is it a container? And like, what is your philosophy on how to figure that out and coming up with the right design?
Honestly, I think that requires like a pretty deep dive into like what their application is. Like, when people say, "Oh, I'm migrating an app to Azure," I raise an eyebrow when they say, "Hey, I want to migrate an app, but there's no architecture diagrams with it." Like, for someone to properly architect the services and the most, let's say, ideal way to do it, the person migrating the app has to know everything about it. It could be an application that processes some internal queue over time. Maybe we want to architect across different services to represent that with the application. Maybe it's just a long-lived or long-running application on a single VM. Maybe that'll be easier, right? But I think that's like a call with the developers. I would really need to understand, like, what exactly does this application do? How does it flow? How does the traffic flow to the application? How does it process whatever data you're using? Until then, I really wouldn't know.
And are you comfortable working in all those spaces, working with developers to help build those architectural diagrams and make those decisions, and then change your hat and engineer and install those things, and then change your hat and operate and maintain those things?
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to it at all. Like, there's like, I'm gonna tell you throughout this whole interview, if I don't know something or I'm not like the most well versed, I'm just gonna tell you. And in the case of that happening in the real world, like, I would attack it as if like I know I'm gonna figure it out. So, yeah.
Can you tell me what your philosophy is with virtual machines in the cloud? Just specifically virtual machines. when to use them, maybe not when to use them.
I think long-lived applications and databases, things that you know you're going to have a stake in for a very long time, that need to be running, that need to have high availability, and that you also want to potentially get a discount with. Things that you want to have, let's say, a higher constraint with in terms of the imaging, or simple applications. It could be like something with IIS or something like that. I guess those are my initial thoughts.
Thank you.
Do you find yourself working with a lot of VMs in the cloud, or is it typically cloud native resources?
In AWS environments, like those are the type of projects that'll really be like super cloud native. But I think with the vast majority of Azure engagements, it's more of an enterprise company that has a very mature set of IT and infrastructure that they just want to lift and shift to Azure. So I think the vast majority of type of Azure projects are working with VMs in some way. Not that there aren't any other services, but I would say the bulk is we got like 100 VMs that are doing X that we need in the cloud, and we want to make sure we're doing it right.
Do you know what drives their decisions to put it in the cloud and keep it there?
Potential costs, potential business relationships as well. Like, I could probably throw a frisbee and find a business that is heavily invested in SharePoint, Outlook, the slew of Microsoft tools, right? They're probably also going to invest in Microsoft Cloud along with that heavy investment, because they have that platform relationship over years and years and years. Not to mention, they probably use SQL. You could probably throw a frisbee and find a business that uses SQL. You could probably throw a frisbee and find a business that uses Active Directory. So I think those two things, the heavy investment with Microsoft is a big deal, and they just want to drag and drop to potentially save costs over time.
What lessons have you seen businesses learn as they transition to hybrid cloud or cloud native that you would share with us to ensure we avoid those pitfalls?
In the same way, I don't know if any of you guys like played sports or anything like that. I played sports. Like, I used to football, wrestling, fighting. Like, there's levels to like everything. And in the same way of like IT infrastructure and maturity, as well as cloud maturity, there's levels too. There's businesses that think they're just gonna migrate things into the cloud and just figure it out as they go because they have a check off on a budget. And then they realize, okay, we have resources in the cloud, but they don't understand that it takes time to really develop that true automated DevOps process behind having maturity with how you deploy in the cloud and how you manage things in the cloud. I think I've seen a lot of teams rush that process, have ClickOps done, manually do things, and then they go, actually, I've heard of Terraform, let's implement Terraform. And they rush for it, and then they realize, oh, it takes a while to set this up. And then it also takes a while to remediate everything. And then it also takes a while to add tags to everything after you've deployed hundreds of resources. And then it also takes a moment for you to get a scope of what's going on. And then in that rushing, they end up reaching out to a third party to try and fix and build at the same time, instead of just taking the time and like accepting, okay, although we got approval for this, it has to be done right, and it has to be over a period of time, because it really does take a moment for you to standardize a process and actually deploy things the right way.
I'll go in with a few again, Charles. What actions would you take in the first few weeks joining?
I usually think like the first couple of weeks, maybe even like a month or two, depending on the org and how fast things move. Access to everything, access to the documentation, and objective understanding of like what the biggest problems are in front of me that I need to solve with my team. But overall, like from an Azure perspective, probably an environment assessment. And I don't mean that like from a security perspective. I mean just a survey of everything that you have. Like within the environment, do we have a map of exactly what we have? Do we have documentation of exactly what's been deployed, and a list from the groups, from the RBAC roles, from the subscriptions, what they're for, what applications live in there, a map of everything. Like that would be the very, very first thing that I personally would do. And then go back to my leadership and ask from there, like, what do you want to do with this now that you know exactly what's here? And like, where do I fit in moving whatever objective you have associated with that?
Okay. And how do you go about figuring something out when you don't know where to start? You know, coming into a new environment, we've got, you know, maybe new tools, different ways to gain knowledge, you know, different knowledge base or no knowledge base. Where do you go?
I usually try to do the documentation first. Usually, I mean, there may be a SharePoint or a Confluence site, maybe that first, and then a person, and then an email.
Thank you. And how do you ensure compliance across environments without slowing down the engineering teams?
Going back to that first point I had made about businesses that will deploy in the cloud and then realize, oh, I have to be in compliance. I would hope that wasn't the case. But as far as like being in compliance, I think it is a given that it will slow down some form of development. I could give you an example recently of a team that's onboarding developers left and right. They onboard a team for a project, they offboard them, repeat the process over and over. Their output is high because they're deploying a lot of applications into the platform, right? But there's no governing policy in place for their deployments, right? And when they do get blocked, because it's teams that have a short-lived engagement with the business, they're in and out really quickly. So when they get blocked, it's a big deal because they only have a short timeline anyways. So if you implement policy that isn't validated, tested, and let's say approved across environments from low to high or something, and those short-lived teams get blocked, is that a risk that's valuable? I would say yes, but it's something to consider. Like, I do think for you to like properly govern the environment, you're going to have to pause some things at first. Like a simple policy that I think everybody should have: these tags are required across these environments, non-negotiable. You can't deploy to the environment without these tags. In that same example I just gave you, if we implement that in one of those environments right now, there would be like 1 million emails from devs saying, hey, I can't do anything, because they're not following a protocol anyways. And now that you implement it, they're going to be slowed down. And I think that's just one example, but I'm saying I think naturally it is a given, even if you like measure twice and cut once, because if they're already not following a process, it's not going to be like a 48-hour turnaround for them to start doing it.
Okay, thank you. Phil?
Yeah, could you talk about some of the Azure networking concepts you've dealt with, or you've used in the environments you worked in?
I would say the vast majority of them are like a hub and spoke topology. I've worked in a few environments that are more of a mesh, like actual like peering all the VNets together. And then I've also worked in environments with it's not called Azure Hub. I believe it's called Azure WAN at this point. But if you're familiar with AWS, there's like a transit gateway that allows you to connect multiple VPCs to a single point. It's that exact same concept, but in Azure. I just forgot what the tool name is. So I've worked in environments like that as well too. But I would say some of the environments, it's not all Azure native cloud networking. And to be specific, like let's say they have a hub and spoke topology. Some teams may have like a Palo. Some teams may have like a FortiGate or something in the actual hub. Or they might have like a site-to-site that's peered to their on-premise and the hub. And Sometimes it doesn't even work like a hub, even if it is a hub. But through all of that, like there's still a variety of troubleshooting to make sure like you add the right spokes and you go through the proper channels. You have the right network security groups or scope with the right networking rules, and then those are the type of environments that I've been in.
Yeah, whenever you have those environments that's kind of in that hub and spoke, and they've got that, I don't really want to call it an MVA, but let's say they've got a firewall in the middle of that hub and spoke. What challenges do you see there as you are building out the environment?
I think coordinating with the team that owns it, especially when it's migration time as well too. Like, I think it's a lot easier to just to build the networking pieces or add the networking pieces from an Azure perspective if there's already like a hub or like a standardized environment. But to do the networking changes, I think there's always like a timeline with it. You open the change window, you got to get everything going, and then I think the calls can be really long. I think the coordination can be strenuous at times because you're not always going to let your cloud people touch your on-premise firewall, even though like they kind of have to work together, right? But I think in my experience that's usually the piece that really can hold things up at times.
Thank you.
And the importance of having those architectural diagrams to show what resources need to talk to what resources, because that hub firewall.
And then because if something is blocked, it's like, okay, where is it blocked at? And like, how can you prove it's not you and your team? Like, it can be a lot.
The logs never lie, so.
True.
What is your philosophy, or what is your experience in observing from logs, metrics, or traces, the three components of observability? Do you have much experience of monitoring things in the cloud?
Yeah, I do. I'm not going to say it's my strong point, but I'm familiar with like what it should look like with a certain set of tools. Like for Azure, I think there should be a centralized log analytics workspace that grabs all of your logs for the entire environment. I mean, you could break it out into separate log analytics workspaces if you'd like. I think you should easily be able to go into your network flow logs and figure out what logs are going where. I think there should be potentially dashboards that you have pinned for different queries. Similarly with like monitoring other things in terms of like applications, you should also have like your application insights and your particular boards associated with what you care about from the application you're monitoring. And like I've been in very like mature Datadog environments as well too. I've been in Dynatrace environments as well too. I think those kind of do the same thing. I'm not like an expert, but if you told me, hey, connect the tool and if you told me, hey, connect to the tool and build a dashboard, I could do that. But as far as like really being like a true SRE with like the 5 golden monitoring signals, I'm familiar, but I wouldn't be able to like run the whole show, right?
Yeah, well, what I heard, well, here's, we're pretty immature in our cloud, and so we're building resources, and they are in their siloed log analytics, and that's just because that's what an immature organization does. Now we got to get them all into Dynatrace, right? So now we have to make that decision and figure out how to do that.
Right.
Is that something you think you could help us figure out how to aggregate those logs and get them into a Dynatrace or a Splunk cloud?
Yeah, I know it's been a second since I've been in a Dynatrace environment, but I know with Datadog, you can pull logs from like a storage account. If you put all the logs in a storage account, I know that you could pull them with Datadog. I wouldn't be surprised if Dynatrace has that functionality as well. And then also, like if you're already paying for Dynatrace, like let's just use it. Let's just use it.
Yeah.
Do you have any more? Otherwise, I can ramble off a few.
Oh, you can go for it.
Okay.
Darcy's got the good stuff.
Charles, just getting to know you a little bit more, if I asked your manager to describe you, how would they describe you? And then kind of on the flip side, if I asked your friends and family to describe you, how would they?
I think my manager would probably say strategic, meticulous, tenacious. I think my family would say probably quiet, driven, and focused.
Thank you. Can you tell me about a time where you maybe broke something in production and what steps you took, what happened next?
Got a tattletale on yourself.
Yeah, this is I can't tell if this is a trick question or not. I'm thinking like there was a change request a while ago to add a subscription to, I forgot, was it? I think it was like Azure Service Bus or something. But more or less, I added the subscription to what they already had outside of the change window. It was like, you know how you could really be really specific with the change window, like at hour 6, at minute 2, da 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 da. I did it like a minute or so before, but because it was an addition, I wasn't removing anything from the environment. Nobody complained about it. But the point is, it happened before. So technically, the change is like implemented incorrectly because I didn't move it to the next stage before I did it, right? But that was just one of those pieces where everything didn't blow up, but it wasn't correct. And then I had to go tell my manager, like, hey, this is what happened. And then it's like small, but you still got to like file or document the error, so to speak. That's the most recent thing I could think about.
Okay. So just kind of went to your manager and said, hey, this is what happened.
Yeah.
Any other steps I need to take? Okay. Considering what you know about kind of the job description, what area would you say you need the most development in?
The application and monitoring piece.
Bill?
Have you been a organization administrator or a platform administrator on Azure DevOps? Or what is your experience in Azure in helping manage an Azure DevOps platform?
Yeah, I've done permissioning, and I guess you could say RBAC from the Azure DevOps perspective. Like, I'm the person who actually has the keys to decide like who gets to do things on the platform. Yeah, I've done that before.
What of the 3 main cloud environments, Google, Amazon, Azure, give me your description of each one. Like how do you classify each one since you've worked in them all, it appears?
So, that's going to be like a very long-winded rant, I believe. So buckle up, right? I have like some strong opinions about the cloud, I will say. Like, so AWS holds the majority of the market share, and I think people fixate on that too much. I think because they hold the majority of the market share, especially people outside the industry, they think AWS is their ticket to getting in the space. But I think a large chunk of those businesses that are in that 32%, they're not mature. Like, they're trying to build cloud native architectures without like a full understanding of, or mature understanding of, IT and infrastructure. And a lot of those businesses rush towards AWS because they're like, oh, I want to build something cloud native like Netflix or something. I think businesses and people fall into that trap. And I think Azure's in second place in terms of the market share, but the majority of businesses using Azure are coming from a more mature IT and infrastructure perspective. Like, even if like you're saying now, like, hey, our cloud footprint isn't that mature, I can almost bet that your on-premise is very mature since you guys have been around for a long time. And I think a lot of businesses in the Azure space are more in that same boat. And then I think GCP is third, but I think businesses flock to them for data. I've seen more interest from the federal space in that like bucket. I think BigQuery and their data offerings are very, very attractive to some businesses. I do think it's the most buggy out of all three since it's been around the shortest. I think GCP is the most buggy. I think Azure is the next one after that. And I think AWS is probably the most stable. But AWS has such like a dictionary of services. Like it's harder for people to learn it because in the same way that I could say, oh, like a load balancer on Azure is an Azure load balancer. On AWS, it's something entirely different. It's like the naming conventions can like trip a lot of people up. And then you have Oracle, no man's land. I don't like Oracle. I don't like the company. I don't like the cloud service provider. If I had to learn it, it would be easy because it's just cloud anyways. But I would never tell somebody to study Oracle. No, I don't care if you got an Oracle database. Like me personally, I wouldn't tell them that.
Are you in?
So I'm like just outside the city.
Gotcha. Yeah, I grew up in.
Small world.
Yes, it is. Now I'm in.
I've been to not Lexington. The very, very unpopular part of it. Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was a more unpopular part of the state. I wish I remember the name though.
Pretty much the rest of the state. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do for fun?
Barbecue, golf, and I guess as of late, like interior decorating, I would say.
Shows.
You're gonna have to design all of our offices now. It's real good. Go ahead, Brian.
I was just gonna say, do you have any experience with express routes, PGP, things like that? Did you get into a little bit of the networking world a little bit more?
Yeah, I've set up one express route ever. I remember it's something that you really just do once, honestly. I roughly remember we had to, I forgot what the platform was, but it has an M and it has a red badge, and that was the vendor that we used to actually plug into the express route at the time. I've literally only done it once, but I completely forgot the process.
Make a path?
Yes, that's what I think it was.
Surprised.
Do you have any experience managing or deploying like Microsoft's low code, no code solutions power platform? Any familiarity with that? The Fabric, Dataverse.
I'm familiar with like RPA development. Like I perceive RPA development to be similar to drag and drop code or like low code, no code, but I've never actually done it on like a Microsoft platform.
Okay, yeah, they're very niche things.
So no experience with Power Platform?
I've set it up like one time for a data platform that we did before. That was part of the environment. But no, I've never like built anything with it myself.
I've got two more non-technical questions, Charles. Can you explain your maybe best or favorite manager and what made them the best for your personality or working style?
I'll probably say my manager now. The ability to set long-term goals that are in alignment with my interests is a big deal, I think. I don't think that everyone has the the opportunity to have goals that align with what they want to develop in their career all the time. I'm grateful for that. And like every time we like have a one-on-one or something, it's always in alignment there. Like they try to make sure they're like, all right, cool, you're developing the skills that you are very interested in, like with Wiz, right? Like I'm very grateful for that.
That's great. Thank you. And then how do you integrate yourself into a new team?
I think like value first, because you're not really going to be like productive as soon as you come in. And like if you can't add any value immediately, it's going to be hard to like integrate. So probably like come in as like a learner first before a leader, and really try to understand what you're walking into. And then from there, try to drive some value, and then you'll get in where you fit in. Because once you actually start to put hands on keyboard, like your uniqueness across the team will speak for itself, and then you could pick up from there.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Might be out. Any questions you have for us, Charles?
So I know you guys are like in different skill set domains in general. Like what is the biggest problem you're hoping to solve with this potential addition to the team from your individual perspectives?
Can I take a stab at this, Bill?
Well, I think this is a question you asked us prior too.
That's a great question.
I'd
Go
like
for
to
it, Tyler.
perspective from it.
Yeah, where the rubber meets the road. You know, we are fumbling our way through this, and we would love to help have someone with some more experience. You know, we're all good people and we'll figure it out, but you know, experience and knowing best practice, having learned that first, you know, that helps. You know, so to help drive us to do it right the first time versus fumble our way and maybe not do it quite right the first time. That's what we're looking for. That's what I'm looking for.
Kind of goes back to the same comments that you made, Charles, earlier about the building. We're in that stage. We're in the infant stage really with our cloud environment. So we're moving, we're getting pressured from the business to get done, move things faster. And just, you know, having that help with a little bit of pushback and kind of just, hey, if we do things right, we'll save ourselves a hell of a lot of time and labor. And, you know, just that understanding of what needs to be done, helping communicate that, and just helping from it up too, is making sure we're not really making any big false steps before we're aware of them. Try to think about things, build a better plan, know directionally where we're trying to go from a cloud perspective. And like I said, we're kind of still early, so it's a great timing to really kind of get in a little bit more foundationally and help drive kind of that process.
So we don't have a big pile of tech debt quite yet.
That's great. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. You're ahead of the game, I promise.
I'm sure there's something there, but you know, a couple groups of resources, a couple isolated, you know, log analytics workspaces and application insights we need to kind of clean up, but it's very early on. We're trying to do it the right way, right?
Nice.
Don't use the GUI, use IAC, right? All the benefits of the cloud, we want to leverage them, you know, but that takes time. Sorry, Scott.
Well, I was just saying that some of the teams have a cloud first strategy. So this is the direction we're going. We're going that way, and as Brian alluded to again, you know, we're trying to make sure we do it correctly. But there is a lot of emphasis on cloud infrastructure, cloud apps, cloud, and more cloud right now. So everything we look at it through that lens right now from how can we build this in the cloud to optimize either performance and uptime. So.
Okay. Okay. From your perspective, what would you say the first 30, 60, and 90 days would look like for the person you choose in this role?
You want to take a stab, or you want me?
I think what I would say, I mean, it's probably going to be a little bit too broad, so bear with me here. But, much like we had already been alluding to, we're already working to deliver some stuff within cloud for the business, a handful of applications. So it would likely be a lot of shoulder surfing and working closely with, and then there's another guy on our team. Staying close to them and seeing what they're doing, how they're doing it, getting acquainted with it, and preparing to step in to help them with those deployments.
Okay.
And I'm gonna throw in help us establish, what artifacts should we have done, documented before we build anything? Help us develop that strategy. What does that look like? Come audit our infrastructure pipelines today and tell us how we can improve. Take a look at our few resources that are using biceps and make the argument on why we should convert to Terraform. Because if it's time to convert to Terraform, now's the time to do it, right? Before we get too deeply invested. So that's the near term stuff for me.
I just want to touch on like what you said. Like, I think there should be a naming convention doc. There should be an architecture doc for your management groups and subscriptions. There should be architecture diagrams for like how you're structuring your repos with Terraform as well. You should be able to actually have a networking diagram as well too associated with that. Like every single like thing ever that that you're going to deploy should have an already predefined naming convention, and also the minimum policies that you're going to want to deploy across your management groups from root level and down. Those are like bare minimum things I think everybody should have before they like do anything. The like the DevOps piece with the pipelines and such, that could also be a bit different, but I think like an architecture diagram for how you want to structure your repos and so on is a big deal. Mono repo versus separate repos as well too, and an argument for both. Branching strategy, even your commit like methodology of what you want your commit messages to say, your PR, MR process. Those are things that come to mind like immediately. That's like, okay, like I would ask for these first. And but going back to the questions though, okay. And like, what would you say like your present documentation hygiene is like?
Let's take that one. I would say it's getting better. We've spent a lot more time focusing on that. I would think the cloud infrastructure seems to be fairly documented well. Thoughts?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say we spent, I think we probably the last 6 months just trying to build out standards documents within our cloud. So when you go to implement the key vault, this is kind of the cookie cutter that we want. This is the bare minimum that you have to do. So we've done that for a lot of the resources that we're using. And now we're actually going back now and developing processes behind those. So as solutions are onboarded, we're doing a proper architectural review so that we understand all these pieces, all these components. We have these network diagrams. We've got everything kind of laid out so that we're trying to take the guesswork out of it. And I kind of chuckled a little bit earlier whenever you were talking about, we were trying to figure out like what VNets flow to what VNets because they're going through a Palo Alto, and I've been living that life for the past month with Brian. And it's been kind of a game of whack-a-mole. We get something unblocked, we run something else, blocked again, and a lot of that is there was no official diagrams given to us by the company that's deploying this piece of software for us. So we're getting there. maturing. Won't act like it's great by any means, but we're definitely trying to put the proper policies, procedures, standards in place where anybody that needs to deploy anything in the cloud, they know exactly how to deploy it, and this is how we do it.
Okay.
We're still pretty low on our VNet count, so.
That's good. That's good.
So once again, it's still kind of the early basis. So.
Okay. And it looks like we got like 2 minutes left. The last question that I'm going to ask is, was there anything that I responded with that would make you hesitant to consider me for the next stage in this opportunity?
Nothing from I don't think there's anything. I'll just say you interviewed pretty well. Actually, really well. So, yeah, we'll just talk to the general team though, but we should be able to get back to you pretty quick. We might need to talk to you a little bit about process. Dan, this is a little bit through. It's going to take us a little bit to figure out what's the best way for us to potentially onboard if we decide to move forward too. So there's some little asterisks, I guess, around that as we move forward. But I think everything's it's just part of the deal with coming through per se. So
Copy. Okay. I think that's everything on my end.
Brian, Bill, anything?
Well, thank you so much, Charles. It was wonderful to get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Almost 6 o'clock your time.
Yeah, we're getting after it.
Okay, thank you so much again, Charles.
Have a nice one.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thanks.